was called the radio talk show. For even the more experienced speakers in the club, after you go through your competent communicator, there's a number of other books that have various different themes. This one is called Public Relations. So for the radio talk show, Ramesh was supposed to act as if he was a guest on a show. In this case, he decided to take it a step further and become a fictional guest. Well, Mark Zuckerberg's a real person. He obviously is not Mark Zuckerberg. Mark does not have a mustache.
Okay.
That's the distinction.
That clarified.
So one of the requirements was the guest expertise clearly established. Was clearly established in the host introduction. Now, the focus here, even though he did have a participant in his speech, the focus really is all on Ramesh and his part of it. That part I thought maybe was a little bit lacking. I think most of us know about Facebook and know about Mark Zuckerberg. I think the approach, though, needs to be that with the assumption that whoever's listening to you really has no idea who you are at all. So I really would have expected a little bit more of an intro, either on his part or for him to come to you and say, tell us more about yourself, blah, blah. However, since you also as Toastmaster were talking about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, we already sort of had that information. Was the speech relevant? Well, sure, we just had this IPO. Everybody lost a ton of money. Well, not everybody, I suppose. Certain financial companies and Mark Zuckerberg himself didn't really lose any money. Was the speech well researched? Well, gosh, yes. I thought you were Mark Zuckerberg. You knew everything inside and out. That really impressed me. That took a lot of reading and a lot of prep time, I'm sure. You used good vocal variety, which is something that comes up in some of the early speeches. It's one of the skills you have to learn. There were times when you slowed down, said something softly. When you were asked a legal question, you were very, very short, very firm. You know, I cannot answer that. But then you changed tone and sort of deflected away from it, which is very, very good. You don't want to focus on the negative aspects. The flip side of that is, when you mentioned your history, you talked about the hacking. Well, being in the IT world, especially Jason, you hear hacking, it's like, I don't know if I like this guy. So while that may be how it started, it may not be a good idea to dwell on that or to come back to that. All in all, I thought you did really well in a back and forth situation. Considering you had really well researched your topic, it doesn't matter what the topic was, I think you could do the same thing. Maybe something I'd like to see in the future, maybe from the club, is an idea. If anybody wants to do this type of speech, work with your host ahead of time. See if your host has a speech to do that involves giving an introduction, or maybe something similar, and then actually sit in chairs. I notice you're working on hand gestures and posture and things like that, but since it's supposed to be a radio show, the only other person who's really going to see it is going to be the radio station crew itself. But all in all, it was a very good speech, very good dialogue back and forth, and the last thing I'd like to congratulate you on with the speech is he said thank you to almost every single question. And I think that's very important. Two reasons. One, it doesn't matter whether it's the host question or an audience question, but also with any live, in a sense live or any prepared radio broadcast, you never know when they're going to end it or if they're going to edit it out. So if the last thing they hear you say is thanks, it's a great ending and it shows your sincerity. So good job.